On this week's Grit and Report, we have the end of a dramatic Pistons free agency saga, some Detroit Tigers all-star announcements, and a snake draft of the best Detroit draft steals. So let's get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yo. In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind, every inch, every rim, from the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the grit iron report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Grit Iron Report, where the stories are proud.
Welcome to the Grit Iron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast, presented by Mic Drop Studios. Today is Wednesday, July 9th, and we are officially in the dog days of Detroit summer. How about that, Kyle?
Yeah, dog days of summer, man. Not too much going on in the sports world. I'm over here nursing a cornhole injury, but we got to push on, right, man? We got to push on. We do have some sports that we can talk about, and I think a good place to start is actually the NBA and the Pistons, because even though NBA Finals is all wrapped up, a lot of NBA free agency is already wrapped up, there are still some things going on, and one of those is the Dennis Schroder trade, where actually a few teams were involved, right? But this actually could turn out to be very, very advantageous to the Pistons, right? In the form of a traded player exception. Can you break this down for the people?
Yeah, so we went over in pretty good detail last week how the Detroit Pistons went about their free agency. You and I both were, I guess, underwhelmed, to say the least. I think a lot of Twitter was underwhelmed with how Trajan was operating, and based on, and we do this every year for every team. Like we amp ourselves up of like who's out there and who we could get, and who, this star player and this star player, and oftentimes it ends up being not that, right? I feel like we set ourselves up for failure every single time, and this was nothing different. We were talking about guys like Naz Reid, we were talking about Miles Turner, and then we kind of were settling on different guys like Jake LaRavia and Bobby Portis and stuff like that, and we kind of even settled down to like Karis LeVert, which we ended up going with, and I've kind of slowly talked myself into it. But one thing that was still outstanding last week was the Dennis Schroder sign-in trade. So Dennis Schroder, somebody that like I wanted to bring back just because we needed that secondary ball handler in that second unit, so Cade can get a breather. You can set up for other guys that are in that second unit. It was a perfect addition for us last season at the trade deadline. And if you remember the trade deadline, that was in like the 11th hour too. We're like, come on, we got to do something, Trajan, like do something. And he did that, and we're all like, okay, like, all right, you proved us wrong. It was the perfect thing that we needed. And so like myself, and I think you were in the same boat, and a few others were like, okay, I want Dennis back. As long as the price is right, Dennis was that perfect second unit leader, that we wanted back in this roster. Unfortunately, it kind of was working out that we were only going to be able to offer him about $14 million per year. The Sacramento Kings came out, they were going to offer him more than that. It was kind of a known thing that they were going to offer him a little bit more to try and steal him away. So it was known that the Pistons were probably going to lose Dennis Schroder. As of last week's recording, though, we weren't sure if that was going to be something that they were just going to straight up sign him in the offseason, basically away from the Pistons, or if it was going to act as something like a sign-in trade. So just to break that down a tiny bit, we broke down a lot of the salary cap and stuff. Kyle did a great job with that a few weeks ago. The only reason that you would do a sign and trade is that because the Detroit Pistons had what's called the early bird rights on Dennis Schroder. So we were able to sign him for a little bit more money than any other team on the market. And Dennis Schroder wanted that little bit of extra money. So he told the Sacramento Kings, hey, I'll sign with you, but I want the amount that the Pistons are only able to give me. So you work with them, basically have them sign me, and then you trade for me, give them something in return, and I'll take that money, and then I'll go play for you. So that's kind of how that was still up in the air. It was being talked about last week. And in that situation, Detroit can come away. They can say, like, okay, if we're going to do that for you, if we're going to be involved and basically give you Dennis Schroder, we want something in return. So then we were talking about Malik Monk. We were talking about John Collins. We were talking about, a number of different guys on different teams that could get involved. Eventually, it all kind of broke down. It was a lot of, again, setting ourselves up like, oh, well, we could work it this way and get this guy involved, and we can end up with this guy, and then we could have this roster. It all ended up being a whole lot of nothing, really, other than some contract maneuverability there. So what ended up happening was Detroit decided, we don't want any of your players, Sacramento Kings. We'll sign Dennis Schroder, trade him to you, along with a 2029 lesser of the two second-round picks. So we had two for 2029. We're giving him the lesser of the two. So we're sending Dennis Schroder and a second-round pick. In return, You send us a 2026 second round pick, which I believe the Pistons didn't have any in the second round. So we're able to get back into the second round next year. And we're not going to take any players from your roster. We don't really care about anyone on there. We don't want anyone. But what we will take is a trade player exception. So without getting too much into the details, I feel like I've already lost a number of listeners here going into the early bird rights and stuff. That basically is saying we have about, I think it was $14 million in which we can trade for a player, accept their full salary, and it's not going to count against our salary cap. So the only reason that kind of is important is because we're already starting to get up there as we start to pay all of our young guys, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. Those guys are up for extensions this upcoming year. These are guys that our salary cap's going to go up. So now we have about $14 million. We can trade for a player, take on his salary, and we don't have to count that against our salary cap. So we have to use it within one calendar year. I don't think it's going to happen now. It probably will be pushed maybe towards the beginning of the season or like in the trade, at the trade deadline. But somebody that works perfectly, just to throw a name out there, is like PJ Washington, 6'7" power forward on the Dallas Mavericks, who just took number 1 overall power forward Cooper Flagg, so they probably don't need it anymore. 14.7 points per game last year, 7.8 rebounds per game last year, 38% from the three-point range. A decent defender, not a great, but a decent defender. A position of need, makes around that $14 million that we can kind of just trade for him, give up a few picks or something, and then not have his salary count towards our salary cap. So that's the only really thing that's come out over this past week, that Dennis Schroder is no longer on the team. We have a little bit more flexibility to move in the future, but nothing groundbreaking has really come, unfortunately.
I mean, it's not bad, really. I mean, I think we were all licking our chops at the prospect of having someone like Malik Monk in that trade. I think it was too good to be true. Obviously, it didn't end up happening. That would have been so sick. But I mean, it is what it is. I still think, the Pistons, like you said, Tyler. We got a lot of flexibility. This is a move where they could make, like you said, beginning of the season, they can wait all the way till the trade deadline if they wanted, all the way into the offseason, really into the beginning of next offseason if they want to wait that long. I don't know if they're going to want to, but I mean, flexibility is not bad. And we trust Trajan Langdon. He really has shown us that he is very much capable of building a roster, and he's really trusting this plan, and the plan worked tremendously this past year. So that is what it is. Anything else on the Pistons before we move on?
It's just like as a stupid fan, it is unfortunate because, like I said, we build ourselves up with like, you could go get this guy, we could run this unit, we could run this starting five, this backup five, we can get this, and at the end of the day, it's not flashy. It's like taking a center. It's like the Frank Ragnow pick, going back to Frank Ragnow, who just recently retired. It's not sexy. It's not going to put butts in seats, but at the end of the day, it probably is the right move. You don't need, just because you can do something like that doesn't mean you need to do it now. So it's like, it sucks from a fan standpoint. It's not sexy. It's not putting butts in seats, but it's probably the right move and gives us that flexibility like you mentioned. And we do trust Trajan. I mean, he's done, in his 1 year, he's done 10 times the amount that Troy Weaver did in his 10 years. So like, we have to trust him. The unfortunate thing is like, there's been situations when we do trade for something like this, a trade player exception, and then we just, because like I said, it has to be used within one calendar year, we don't end up using it for one reason or another, whether that's front office ineptitude, there's not the right move out there, we just never end up using it. And so that situation would suck. But in that situation, I guess then we still did get a second round pick for in the 2026 draft. So it's not sexy. It gives us flexibility. Trajan can now cook at some point in the future. So let's just kind of hope he does. But I mean, like we said to start the episode, it's a dog days of summer. If there's something as small as this to report on, we're absolutely going to do it because we need some Detroit sports stuff to, we eat, breathe, and sleep Detroit sports. So we got to report on something, right? The Dennis Schroder saga is officially over. Good luck, Dennis Schroder. We loved you for the season. Come back to Detroit anytime. I'd gladly have him back.
Yeah, Dennis Schroder was money, man. He is a big reason why they were able to make that playoff push like they did, get in the playoffs and play really well. So, yeah, awesome. And, yeah, like you said, Tyler, it is the dog days of summer, but we do have a tremendous baseball team that I would love to talk about right now. Let's talk about the Detroit Tigers real quick. So just a quick update. I feel like every week we give you the same update, and it's a fantastic update. So the team now 58-34 on the record. That's 2 games better than the next best team in the majors. And I mean, the Tigers are just buzzing, man. They're just winning a lot of games. 4-game win streak as we're recording Tuesday night. 7-3 in their last 10, and a whopping 14-game lead in the Central. I think the Royals and Twins are both Yeah, same record, 14 games back of the Tigers. So, I mean, yeah, it's almost curtain call. I mean, of course, like I say this, and then somehow just the Royals are going to make like a tremendous push, and I'm going to feel like a fucking idiot. But right now, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a 14-game lead in as early July. Like it's insane, man. The team can just coast. I don't want them to coast, but they're cruising right now.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, I haven't like ever like looked, and the Tigers have never really been, at least they haven't been in this situation in quite some time, right? It's been like a decade. So like, I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't think you get 14-game leads in a division all that often. And I think that speaks to how good the Tigers are playing. It also speaks to how poorly the rest of the AL Central is. I mean, they went like 0 for a 20 streak or something like that. But I mean, like you mentioned, we could coast. We have to remember that like the last 2 years, the Minnesota Twins have been probably not to this level, but the Minnesota Twins have been in a very comfortable position midway through the season, even like 3/4 of the season, and they do what the Twins do, and they shit down their leg, and whether it's us, the Guardians, even the Royals at some points, like they start to catch up, and that happened last year, and they end up missing the playoffs all entirely. So like it's important not to coast too much, but like I don't have this in front of me. I can't imagine there's many 14.5-game leads in divisions at this point of the year, like ever in baseball.
Yeah, I just looked it up. One team, I guess the team who has the record for the largest lead in a division at the All-Star break is the 2001 Seattle Mariners. 19-game lead on the next best team in the AL West there. Yeah,
that's not that much more.
It's not that much more, and that team was 63-24. The Tigers right now 58-34. So still, I mean, an incredible feat to be 14 games up. Yeah, they can just keep doing what they're doing. The craziest thing, Tyler, is like this Tigers team haven't even been like crazy healthy. Like they've been battling injuries. They've injuries to the pitching staff, injuries to quite a few of their positional players, and they're still cruising. So just wanted to point that out, that once the team continues to get healthy, knock on wood that they do continue to get healthy, yeah, I think it's smooth sailing from there.
Does that scare you at all? Because I hear that, and I think I go two different ways, right? I say like, okay, we're winning, and I think we had this conversation when we were talking about the Lions too. Like, we're winning with all these injuries. Like, we're scrapping and clawing our way, and guys that are not normally the guys that you're going to rely on are stepping up in big times. And, for example, Trey Sweeney hit that home run off a fastball. He's never hit a home run off a fastball in his entire career. He comes up from being demoted to AAA and comes up, hits a home run against a fastball, and Tigers end up winning in extra innings against the Guardians the other day. Like, does that scare you? And like eventually water is going to find its level, and the guys that we're leaning on aren't gonna, they're gonna be what we think they are. And Trey Sweeney is not always gonna hit his first home run against a fastball to save the day. Does that scare you that we're relying on guys like that, or do you look at the other way and say like, we know what we have in our superstars when they're having off nights, as long as the other random guys can pick up the slack, we're good to go. We're gonna make noise in October.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the latter. And yeah, first of all, shout out Trey Sweeney. I think mere days after I called him out for being just disgusto barfo ass and not knowing why he's in the majors, he just went yabo on that homer. So
he heard
props to you, Trey, for he definitely hurt me. Definitely is an avid listener. Props to you, Trey, for proving me wrong, and just an incredible game when the Tigers were almost down and out, and they come back, score that run in the 9th, and then win it in the 10th. Yeah, so good for Trey Sweeney. But to answer your question, Tyler, definitely more of the latter. Certainly not a concern for me. I just think that this team, it has so much depth. I mean, you just look at top to bottom. I mean, the amount of guys that are batting like 250 plus, like it's actually crazy when you look at the success of all these guys. Looking at the Javi Baez's and the Zach McKinstry's, who are having just insanely good seasons. It's just adding so much depth that like even if like one or two guys goes into a slump, that means that 3 or 4 other guys are still just mashing the ball, because you just have that much depth and that much hitting, and really, really tremendous fielders in the field too, just making awesome plays. Like it's top to bottom. Like these guys can play. And, Scott Harris and AJ Hinch have just created a monster of a team where there isn't just one absolute superstar, but there's just a bunch of very, very good players. And we'll get into the All-Star selections in a little bit. But the depth, what I love, the depth doesn't just stop at the MLB level. You have guys like Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Jose Briseño, who have just been promoted to AA Erie. They are raking in the minor leagues. They are all top, 20 prospects in the entire MLB. And they're in our farm system. So just the cupboard is so stocked on top of just all of these really tremendous players who are already in the bigs. So, yeah, it's definitely not a cause for concern for me. I'm pretty ecstatic about this team.
I'm glad you brought those guys up, the Kevin McGonigal's, the Max Clarks, the Jose Briseño, of the world and of our organizations and stuff. Because I want to just get on a soapbox for a quick second and say, like, hey, Bleacher Report specifically, and other outlets out there on Twitter and X, the Everything App and everything, stop mocking us trading for Paul Skeens. I love Paul Skeens as much as the next guy, but I saw one today that we were trading for Paul. So Detroit gets Paul Skeens. The Detroit Tigers are giving up Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal. So that's our top 2 prospects. Both, I believe, are top 5 in the MLB at the moment. Jackson Jobe, who obviously we're kind of still waiting to see what we have in him when he comes back from his injury. Colt Keith, who has been, I think, about as steady as you can be. Like he's a phenomenal. He's playing everywhere we need him to, and he's been an extremely average to above average baseball player. And Sawyer Gibson-Long, who has battled injury a little bit over the last few months and over the last year, but has proven to be a really good depth piece and a guy that, like, if we need to do a little chaos pitching, he can go in there and do that. So, like, just not to go off on this, but like, if we're giving up Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Jackson Jobe, Colt Keith, and Sawyer Gibson-Long for Paul Skeens, are you doing that?
I'm definitely not. I mean, like Jobe, you mentioned Jobe.
Thank you.
He was I think the number 1 prospect in the minors before he was promoted to the majors this year. Is technically still his rookie season this year. So yeah, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, if you did that, it would be under the impression that you were not only signing Paul Skeens to a long-term deal, but I think you still have to sign Skubal to a long-term deal, and just know that you're going all in on these 2 superstar pitchers. Like, I don't think you're, selling the farm to sign Paul Skeens and then still letting Tarek walk. Like, that would piss me off so much. That would be the worst thing that they could do. Now, if they did sell the farm and they did sign both Skeens and Skubal to long-term deals, I don't know. I mean, you're just not beating that team. There's no way because that team is making the playoffs every year, and there's no way you were beating that team in a 4-game series when you have those 2 studs who, are basically winning almost every game they pitch. I mean, Skeens isn't winning every game, but he should be if he was on a competent team. But still, yeah. I'm not making that.
I think you pull one of those guys out, like you pull out Colt Keith or you pull out Kevin McGonigal. I think if you pull out one of them, and you made a great point, and you extend Tarek, for his entire life to stay here in Detroit, I think then I'm thinking about it. But it's a great point that, like, if Tarek, you do that at this trade deadline, and then Tarek leaves this offseason, you're basically back to where you were, and you have half the farm system. So that's the key. Take out one of those guys, and also guarantee we extend Tarek, and then I'm thinking about it. But I just want to put that out there, like, hey, Bleacher Report, whoever you are listening to our podcast for some reason, stop putting that out there. I'm tired of looking at that. We're not doing it, or change it a little bit, and then maybe we'll talk.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about the All-Star game real quick and the All-Star selections, because if there was ever a reason for a 58-34 team who has a 14-game lead in the AL Central, if there's ever a reason for them to have a chip on their shoulder, I think it's the fact that they only have 4 players in this All-Star game. When you could make an argument that they should have at least 7. So just looking real quick, I think we talked about it, or maybe we didn't, because I think the All-Star starters were announced like the day after we recorded last week. But you've probably already heard it by now. Riley Green, Javi Baez, and Gleyber Torres are your All-Star starters from the Detroit Tigers. Skubal may be a starter. It depends on a couple things. Depends on rest days. I think he might only have 4 days of rest before the All-Star game. So, it depends on that. And obviously, he might have enough rest, and he might, not be chosen. Might be a guy like Max Fried or something chosen instead. But I think that Skubal has a pretty good chance of being the starter for the All-Star game. But still, that's 4 starters. But then you have guys like McKinstry, Mize, Torkelson, and then guys in the bullpen like Vest and Tommy Canley, who are not All-Stars. They're not even reserves, their reserves were just announced on Sunday. So I think there's some snubs, man. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, they asked Tarek about it the other day, and just Tarek being the great teammate that Tarek is, he was like, "No, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a great accomplishment, but I'm really disappointed that I don't have more of my teammates there with me." And I agree with you, and I agree with him. I think there's a somewhat of a gripe to have. So last year, the Phillies had 8 players go to the All-Star team. The Guardians had 5. This year, it's more of a, I don't know if this was on purpose or because a little bit is fan voted or if there's any rhyme or reason to it. There's a lot more parity here. So this year, the leading team is the Dodgers with 5. So the Detroit Tigers obviously have 4 or likely have 4, as you mentioned. So it's not like we're, have nobody going and it's not like some team has a whole bunch going, but we're tied with second with 4. So, you just mentioned it. So Zach McKinstry, who is absolutely deserving with whether it's his bat, his defense, playing everywhere around the field. He just played, he DH'd for Spencer Torkelson the other day, which is his first time in his career playing first base. So now he's played every single position except for catcher, I believe, in his MLB career. Right now, he did actually finish 3rd in fan voting. Right now, he is the 11th among AL players with a 2.6 WAR. He's hitting 285 with an OPS of 812. The issue with him is he was listed as his third baseman. Like, that's his natural position, even though he has played all around the field for us. And when you look at the third baseman for the AL starters, it's Jose Ramirez. And some of these other guys. Yeah, exactly. And rightfully so. So, like, if I think you put him at like any other position, maybe he has a better chance. Maybe not first base being out like Vlad Guerrero Jr. But for him, it kind of just comes down to like the position he was put at and saying like he just wasn't going to beat those guys out. But he is very deserving of that position. You mentioned, we have Torkelson. I just said was DH for McKinstry there. Tork is 4th in the AL in home runs, first in first baseman home runs. The issue with him is that his defense hurts his WAR a little bit. I think he's like a -2 or something, defensive run saved or something. So his WAR is hurt a little bit, and his bat is just, average. Like, it's good for his power, but it's just an average kind of at bat. And then same thing as Zach McKinstry. He's going up against Vlad Guerrero, who is one of the most popular young stars in the league. And as popular as Tork is here in Detroit with his resurgence, he's not beating out Vlad Guerrero nationwide. So again, kind of just is the position against the starters that are there. Look at some of the reserves. There's a few guys that maybe he could, those guys could take out in the reserve, and there's guys that are going to be listed as starters and reserves that are going to not end up playing based to injuries. I think Alex Bregman was listed as a reserve. I don't even know if he's back from his injury yet. I might be wrong on that. So like that already might be one that won't be playing. So these guys might get to call, and we might get more guys as reserves. But those two guys in general are both very deserving. You talked about Casey Mize, 9-2 with a 2.63 ERA. Issue with him is that the two pitchers that he has better numbers from, or better numbers than, and can beat out, are the sole representatives from the Los Angeles Angels and the Chicago White Sox. So like, as Detroit Tigers fans, we know what it's like to only send one guy for a few years just simply because you need to have a representative, even though he wasn't really worthy. That is probably taking a position from Casey Mize because he has better numbers than both those guys, but they need a representative. So it's a lot of like real deserving guys, but aren't making it because just by the way the field kind of falls, which is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, I just want them to be healthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is what it is, man. We can bitch and moan that they should have, a couple more representatives from the Tigers in the All-Star game. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna watch it. It's still gonna be awesome, man. I think I'm super pumped to watch this All-Star game. I feel like I haven't really watched it in like 3 or 4 years because the Tigers have been so shit, and there's just been representation, or the token one Tiger that gets representation just because I think every team needs to send a guy. But yeah, it's I'm super pumped to watch the Midsummer Classic a week from today as we're recording.
Are you in the camp that like you want the accolade of another Tiger starter in Tarek Skubal or Tarek to be rewarded a little bit for his insane season that he's having, even if it does come on a little bit of less rest and not saying anything would happen from just performing on less rest, but like, or are you like, I don't give a shit about that at all, like don't be a starter, like go less innings or something like that? Where do you fall on that?
I think that if he's going 4 days rest, if I did my math correct, and if he does make the starts that he's slated to start, I think he'll be on 4 days rest. And honestly, I think I'd be fine with him pitching. Like I don't think. I mean, obviously, I'm not a sports doctor and not involved with the team or anything. Maybe someone on the Tigers would be like, absolutely not. 4 days rest would be insane. You're pitching the All-Star game. That's 1 inning. I think that on 4 days rest, you can pitch 1 inning, and you're probably going to be completely fine from an injuries perspective. So from that standpoint, yeah, I'm sending him out 4 days. I mean, now if it's like 3 days rest, okay, yeah, probably not. Even for that 1 inning, it's probably not worth it. But I think 4 days rest, I think he's totally fine, and I would love to see him start in the All-Star game. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a hoss. So like, if someone can fight through, it's a hoss like Tarek. So it'll be fun. Like you said, I haven't watched it in a few years. They don't still do it, and this might come off as unintelligent, but like they don't still do where home field advantage is rewarded by the All-Star game, right?
They don't. I think they switched that up probably like 7 or 8 years ago, maybe somewhere around there.
That's probably about the time I stopped watching, because that's right when the Tigers are getting bad. There really wasn't that much implication on the line, so it kind of fell into like the NBA All-Star game a little bit.
It was really fun when that game was meaningful. I totally get why it shouldn't dictate. Like it really shouldn't dictate. I mean, if you have the best record, you should have home field advantage in a especially in a best of 7 World Series final. But it was fun when the game was meaningful, and also like the American League would win almost every year, which was just so hilarious. At least growing up for me,
we had Mike Trout and just every year like leading off with home runs.
Oh yeah, man. So it was super fun when it was meaningful. I still think that even though it doesn't mean anything, it's still probably one of the best All-Star games. Probably one of the only ones that I watch
Since the Four Nations.
Probably Four Nations, obviously, this year was incredible, but maybe a hot take, maybe not. I really like the Home Run Derby, and they've switched up, how the format of it, and some years are better format-wise. Some years they kind of switched it up, and it's too weird. But overall, like, I will watch the Home Run Derby, usually because there's nothing else on, but, like, I do watch that. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Yeah, I like betting on Home Run Derby, like overs and unders and stuff like that, and that is, you're right, I will watch that. So I was just trying to pull up real quick to see if those have been decided, the Home Run Derby. I know Torque is like the only one who could be kind of in that number or in that competition, but I haven't seen any list of who is actually going to be in that.
I think they're only like partially decided. I think they've announced like maybe 4 of the guys that are in the Home Run Derby, and there's I think another 4 slots or something like that. So I think they're still rounding that out.
So yeah, we'll be tuned in. We'll be tuned in for just to watch our guys and see how they do. And it's always fun to see them. Like we said last week, they'll mic the guys up and have them chatting with the broadcast announcers. And Detroit is rightfully so going to get a lot of good, national recognition because they are playing so well. And people were talking about how great of a job Scott Harris has been doing and how great of a manager AJ is and how the chess match that is his way of management. So we'll get a lot of great viewership. So I'll be tuned in. Absolutely. You said it's 1 week from today, right?
Tuesday, whatever that Tuesday is, the 15th. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so shout out to those Tigers. We talked about Scooby, how he's been insane his last 2 outings, 16 innings pitched, no earned runs, 23 strikeouts, no walks. I feel like for a little bit there, for a few weeks, and not to dive back into this, we can just kind of brush over it, but like he had a little bit of a walk issue. I feel like he went like a month and a half of not walking a guy, and then suddenly he was walking like 2 guys in 1 inning for like maybe a stretch of like 3 to 4 starts. So it's good to see him back on his strictly strikeouts, no walk kind of run. And it also helps that we're going up, against Cleveland and sweeping them, a Cleveland team that has just terrible offense. But it's good to see him get back a little bit.
Yeah, I know you texted that. I think he probably walked 2 guys in 1 inning like once, and then you texted like, does he have a walk problem? Like,
I was offended.
I mean, no. I don't have his last 5 starts stats up, but like I feel like he walked like 2 guys 1 start and then like 1 guy another start, and then you're just saying he has like a walk problem when his walk rate is still insanely low and it's the best in the MLB. So.
When you go from 0 walks to 3, I'm thinking something is concerning. Something is up with my guy.
All right, I think you're way too blessed with Turk Skubal, and like you don't know what bad pitching is now. Watch a Jack Flaherty start, and then you'll get right back to it. But
yeah, or like let me try and find where Kenta Maeda is at the moment, and then watch one of his starts, and I'll be brought right back down to earth. But
also, sorry, Jack, that was an absolute stray.
Yeah, dude,
not at all warranted. He pitches tonight, actually.
Now he's pitching right now.
Tuesday 8th, he's pitching right now. Does he have a walk yet? Like, is the game started? It's 2-0.
It did just start.
Tampa Bay just scored as we're talking. So, yeah. I don't know if he has a walk yet, but no walks. No walks. No walks and 4 strikeouts. So, yeah, take that, Kyle. 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned runs, no walks, a homer and 4 strikeouts. So not bad. Or 5 strikeouts now? Yeah. All right.
So, let's keep it going. So, like we said, dog days of summer, but we had some Pistons stuff to report on. We have a good amount of Tiger stuff to report on. It's going to be a lot of Tigers. Like Kyle said, to kind of start the Tiger segment, we've kind of gone through a lot of the same stuff with the Tigers because it's been a lot of great week after week after week. It's a lot of random guys doing their job. And like we kind of said, guys that you don't necessarily need to rely on every night, but just like out of nowhere doing their job. So it's been a lot of good stuff. We'll have a lot more to talk about them as we get closer to that trade deadline, if Scott Harris maybe agrees with me and like maybe we don't want to rely on those guys as much as we have been, and we need another superstar, whether that's, you know, a swing and miss bat in the bullpen, another starter, really meat of the order batter, whether it's righty or lefty. And we'll have a lot of that to discuss. Like we said, probably in the next 2 weeks, we'll do an episode, a breakdown of who's out there, what it would take to get them, what we'd be willing to give up, stuff like that. So, but we do have a little bit of fun to have with you guys here. So we talked about this, it was last week's episode that was really like just the draft episode, right? We had the Detroit Pistons draft and free agency. We had the Detroit Red Wings draft and free agency. It is nice that they're all in the same week. We have the MLB draft, which is coming up here shortly too. There's a lot of mock drafts coming up for the Tigers, who I think will be selecting 24th overall. Strange that they do theirs right in the middle of the season, but that's how they do it. So we had a lot of draft talk on the mind and kind of got us thinking, who do we think was the biggest draft steals, the biggest hidden gems that any Detroit team has found? So we're going to do a snake draft of Detroit steals in a draft. So that's Tigers, Pistons, Red Wings, Lions. And I was talking to Kyle this morning about like, well, what kind of constitutes a steal, a draft steal? And Kyle said it perfectly. You know what draft steal when you see them. You know a gem when you see one. So we don't really have many parameters around that. But let's just do a real quick number generator. Just for the record's sake, I am undefeated when we generate numbers. Kyle has yet to win the first overall pick. You were on a hot streak, though. I won our first first Mount Rushmore. You've won the last two, so I'm trying to get back up on the horse there. But before we do that,
is this a must win or a can't lose for you?
There's people.
Or you're not even worried about it.
No, we're worried about it. We're worried about it, especially because this is, like we said, dog days of summer. This is when this stuff means the most. We're worried about it, but it's not yet, and it's not. The next one will definitely be a must win if I don't come away with this one. So let's go even or odd for the number one while I generate this.
It's got to be even eventually. I'm going even. I'm sticking with my guns. It's even.
All right. I do 1 through 10. I just do a real quick generate. If it's even, it's your pick. If it's odd, it comes out as 5. So
there's no way.
Once again, the kid is now 3-0 on getting or 4-0 and getting the first overall draft pick.
Wow. And this is interesting. I almost didn't want number one because I feel like having that back to back is going to be really helpful here. But yeah, I think there is a consensus 1-1. All the other snake drafts that we've had, you could go pretty much anywhere. I think there's a consensus 1-1, and I'm curious to know your 1-1 pick.
Okay, so you're scaring me because I didn't think there was really a consensus 1-1, and I was also thinking like, I don't think I won overall, and now here we are. So let me pull up my list here, and let me.
Didn't mean to put any pressure on you.
Yeah, dude, we already were talking about how much pressure I already have.
We can embrace debate too, because that's what I think is consensus 1-1. That doesn't mean it's what the listeners think. That doesn't mean what you think, but I would love to hear your 1-1 pick though.
Okay, so my 1-1 pick, I told Kyle before this, I think this was actually much more difficult than I had originally thought it was going to be. And I started looking at a bunch of guys that in my head, I'm like, draft steal right there, that's a guy. And I went to look at them and realized that they actually weren't drafted by Detroit. And that took a lot of guys out of my list, unfortunately. So my number one overall draft pick is going to be Nicholas Lidstrom for the Detroit Red Wings. Drafted in the 3rd round, 53rd overall in the 1989 NHL draft, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, 7-time Norris Trophy winner, most by a European defenseman, 12-time All-Star, Conn Smythe winner, Hockey Hall of Fame, widely considered one of the top 3 defensemen ever. He is my 1-1 pick, and I'm really curious to see if he was your number 1 pick as well.
Yeah, he was 1-1 for me. The only reason why I was maybe leaning towards another guy is just the draft slot. But I do think when you're looking at the NHL, when you're looking at a 3rd round pick, that's enough of a steal for me. Or I guess that's a late enough of a pick for me to say that that's a steal. And Lidstrom is just he's incredible. You know, I grew up as he was one of my favorite players. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic pick. I think he was 1A. And there's a reason why I was pretty ecstatic about not going first here, because I think there's a ton of value still on this board. And so for my number 1 pick, this one's pretty easy for me. I'm going with the Magic Man himself. Pavel Datsyuk, 6th round pick in the 1998 NHL draft. So when you're looking at just extreme value, Hall of Famer, two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Red Wings. He's the Magic Man. He is some of the best, if not the best, hockey deke moves in the history of the NHL. The things that he could do with his stick handling, the goals that he could score through 3 defenders, 4 defenders. Seemingly, it didn't matter. He is just such an exceptional player. To get him in the 6th round, insane pick. I'm happy to have him as my first round pick.
Yep, he was on my list. He was, I mean, I agree with you, kind of right in that he wasn't going to be 1-1 for me, but he was definitely on my list of like, if he fell to me, I'd be ecstatic with him. He was one of the first guys. You said you grew up, idolizing and watching Nick Lidstrom. I was a little bit later, and that like Pavel Datsyuk was one of the first guys like I remember watching, and you still go back. He's kind of in the same boat as like Barry Sanders or Tavon Austin or like guys that you put on his highlights for somebody that like has never seen him before or like even hasn't never watched this sport before, and like you're almost watching their reaction to watching him play. Like watching him in a shootout, just random clips on Twitter, it can change your entire mood. He is insane. I've never seen anyone like him, and I still to this day I don't think I've seen anyone do what he was able to do. So that's great value there. I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, dude, appreciate that. Magic Man, my first pick. My second pick, there's still a ton of value on the board here. I could go a lot of different ways, but I'm going with my guy, and I'm picking him because he didn't get picked on my team for when we did the Mount Rushmore of absolute must-see Detroit athletes. He's got to be on my team here. Tarek Skubal, 9th round pick in the MLB draft. He is currently the best pitcher on the planet, 2024 AL Triple Crown and Cy Young winner. The Tigers signed him for $350,000 when they drafted him. I mean, I feel like there can't be that much. You can't have a bigger steal than that 9th round pick. And he's probably going in this offseason, and hopefully by the Tigers, mind you, but he's probably going to be the highest paid pitcher in MLB history when he signs this contract. And I'm really hoping that the Tigers fork over the money for him. But yeah, I'm going with Tarek Skubal.
So he was on my list. He was not on my immediate list. He was more just on the outside, just because like that is insane value with what you picked him, but then also like where the Tigers actually picked him in the 9th round, just because he is the best pitcher in baseball, and he has been for over a calendar year now, right? He was best pitcher last year, best pitcher in this year still. So like that's insane value with the 9th round pick. I just need to see a little bit more of his work in order to call him, in one of my top draft picks, steals in Detroit history. But I also was, because when I put him on my list, I also was thinking like, where do I put him up against the other Detroit, the best Detroit pitchers of all time with Justin Verlander, specifically guys like we drafted like Justin Verlander, and like he's putting up seasons that are, just as good as those seasons, but Justin just did it for so much longer. So it's a great pick. And like I said, the value on that might be the best value that we have on the board out of most of these guys, at least a lot of my guys. There's a few other ones that are similar, but the value on Tarek Skubal right now is insane. So that's a really great 1-2 punch with the Magic Man and Tarek Skubal. And like you said, you had to pick him because you famously missed him on the first draft we did.
Absolutely. All right, so now you have 2 picks.
So now I have 2 picks. I'm going to go the 2 guys. So my just so out there, my 2 and 3 are still on the board, and I'm gonna go with one of them. I might call an audible here with my 3 pick and switch things up, but my number 2 pick, I'm gonna go with Dennis Rodman. I think Dennis Rodman is, not only was he kind of like a strange draft pick and strange person, but like it's great value. Interesting that he kind of. And I know what people are going to say. Like Dennis is kind of barely a draft steal just because he was picked in the 2nd round. He was the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. So it's kind of right there on the edge. He was 2nd pick, 27th overall. So only 27 picks and up to that point in that draft. In the 1986 NBA draft by the Detroit Pistons. He is a 5-time NBA champion, 2 times with Detroit. Obviously, he went on to have an insane year, pretty much with an insane career with every other team he was with, the Bulls, the Lakers, stuff like that. 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 7-time rebounding champion, 2-time All-Star, NBA Basketball Hall of Fame. He is like the first guy that made defense and rebounding cool. Like he is the Draymond Green before Draymond Green. He is the guy that gave and helped like mold Detroit into like this gritty, tough, like don't fuck with us kind of attitude. We're gonna beat you on the defensive end. If you're gonna beat us, you better score more than 80 points because you're not gonna get much more than that. So like he is the first one, and I just love that picture of him where he's just fully extended, diving for a ball into the stands. Like he he had no care for like his well-being or anything. He was just going to rebound the ball. He's going to play defense great. So he's my first pick in the second round for me.
Yeah, great pick, and I had him on my list too. You mentioned 7-time rebounding champion. He was also 7-time NBA All-Defense first team. So that's just pretty insane to do that 7 different times in your career. And then he's a big part of the Bad Boys Pistons. Big part of why Jordan won all of those championships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rodman was with him for 3 of those. So yeah, he's a hell of a player. And to get him in the second round like the Pistons did, really, really good value there.
Yeah, big time weirdo, big time steal, the worm right there. So with my third pick, I'm going to go a little bit out of order. And I think if anyone ever says I'm a panderer, look back at this pick because this might hurt me with the masses and the public out there. I'm going to go with Lou Whitaker with the Detroit Tigers. Right. So Lou Whitaker, 5-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove, 1978 AL Rookie of the Year, over 2,300 hits, 244 home runs as a second baseman. One of the absolute mainstays in that last Detroit Tigers World Series champion team in 1984. Somebody that like a lot of new players and fans and stuff, they might not know a whole bunch about Lou Whitaker, but he's somebody that like was a steal in that you can't tell that the story of the 1984 team without talking about Lou Whitaker. Not in the Hall of Fame, I don't believe. Kind of up for debate, kind of a controversial that he's not in at the moment. But Lou is going to be my guy with the Detroit Tigers taking him there.
Love it. Yeah. A bit before our time, but yeah, agreed. Certainly not a pander pick, but a fantastic pick. I think he was, the cornerstone of that defense, second base. It was him and Trammell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turning two. Yeah, just an outstanding player. And yeah, he led the Tigers to their most recent, championship. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said there. Really good value there. I think he was, what'd you say, the 99th overall pick in the draft. So yeah, really good pick.
He was 5th round. I don't know what overall pick that would be. So 5th round, so good value there. If you're going to say that Dennis Rodman was barely a steal in the draft, being in the second round, Lou Whitaker going in the 5th of the 1975 MLB draft. So I'll take that. What are you going with your third pick?
Oh man, this is tough, man. I got a lot of guys still on my board. Did not have Lou on my board, albeit it was a very good pick. So this is a tough one. I think I gotta go with my guy. This is a guy who I have his jersey. I loved watching him for the Red Wings as well. The captain, it's got to be Big Z, Henrik Zetterberg. Yep. Just when we talk about insane drafting that the Red Wings were able to do. 7th round pick in the '99 NHL draft. Won the Stanley Cup in 2008 with the Red Wings. I thought that he had won the Cup in 2002 as well, because I'm like, well, he's drafted in '99. He's definitely on that team. He actually, his rookie season was the year after that, so only won 1 Cup with the Red Wings. But he's captain of the team from 2012 until 2018. So right after Lidstrom retired, Z became the captain, and there is something to be said about being a captain for the Red Wings. It doesn't just happen. They don't just give it to anyone. They'll go years without a captain until someone has earned it. And as we saw between the gap between Zetterberg and Larkin there, finally becoming captain. So yeah, to be the captain of the Red Wings, Conn Smythe winner in 2008. That's the MVP of the playoffs. He's in my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer. He's not in yet. He's definitely borderline. I think that he has done enough to be a Hall of Famer, but at any rate, he's a Red Wings legend, and to get him in the 7th round, I think it's just some insane value there.
Get him in the 7th round, and then to get him where you got him in this draft is also insane value. He was my number 3 that I end up pivoting and taking Lou, just based on Lou's accolades with the All-Stars, Gold Glove, Rookie of the Year, stuff like that. But Zetterberg has to be on someone's. And I was actually, when I was going through this list of my options, like, there's so many Red Wings. Like, the Detroit Red Wings were eating for like 10 years, Zetterberg and Lidstrom and all these guys and Datsuk. Like, what a great pick Zetterberg was.
Oh, dude, so insane, man. I mean, it honestly makes me feel a little depressed that we haven't been able to draft at that caliber the last like 15 years. But I mean, it's not to say that guys like these just grow on trees. So the fact that the Red Wings were doing that and just getting all of these insanely talented guys, future Hall of Famers, future captains, future, Conn Smythe, Hart Trophy winners, whatever, with these 6th round picks and 7th round picks, and it's awesome, and I hope that we get back to those glory days at some point. But I have one more pick, and I'm picking now, correct? This
you have one more, and then I wrap us up. Yep.
Okay, I got one more. Shit, man, I got 2 Red Wings already on my team, and I think I got to go with a third. This guy, he's a legend. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a value pick for me. It was certainly a value pick for the Red Wings. 4th round pick in the 1989 NHL draft. It's Sergei Fedorov. I mean, this guy is insane. Like, I mean, Hart Trophy winner, which is the MVP of the NHL. He won 3 Stanley Cups for the Wings since he was drafted. He's a Hall of Famer. To get him in the 4th round pick, it's just insane, man. And it makes me a little depressed that the Red Wings can't do this with drafting anymore. I don't know if maybe they just had insane sabermetrics and scouts when other teams didn't in like the late 90s and late 80s, throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. But this team can just straight up draft. And so I got three Red Wings on my team. But Sergei Fedorov.
He was going to be my next pick, so I was like, there's no way he's going to go with another Red Wing, and so kind of pissed off that you did. Is that going to hurt your overall score? I don't know, maybe. Well, who's to say? But I was going to take him. He was going to be my next one. He had to be on a list, right?
Yeah. I think he's got to be on it. I almost took him before Zetterberg. I'm like, this is crazy, man. I kind of had them neck and neck. So, 3 Red Wings. We'll see what the listeners, what the voters think about me taking 3 Red Wings. But there's just, I don't know. There's too much talent to be left on the board there.
So this is where it gets a little bit dicey for me. I had all these guys on my list as well. That's kind of where I was going. This is where it gets a little bit where maybe they don't necessarily consider it, whether they're not considered actual steals, whether they're not aren't deserving of being actually on on our Mount Rushmore and our snake draft. But I think I'm going to surprise some people here, and this might be a bad value, but I think I'm going to go with an absolute classic, somebody that while we were so bad for so long, he was the one guy that I knew, and everyone in the league knew.
Good pick.
And that's Jason Hansen.
Yes.
He was on your. Okay, I was a little bit scared to pick him, but I'm going to go Jason Hansen. Obviously, the kicker from the Detroit Lions, drafted in the 2nd round, 56th overall in the 1992 NFL draft. So I don't know how it was back in 1992. Nowadays, well, I guess in the last few years, it's been a little bit more common, but for a good 20 years there, kickers were not drafted in the NFL. It was like Sebastian Janikowski, and like that was it over until the last few years. So taking Jason Hansen in the 2nd round is just insane, and it proved to be one of the most consistent, best picks the Lions have ever made.
Yeah, still got insane value out of him. Like he's the Lions' all-time scorer. Like, I mean, 2nd round pick, you'd be like, oh shit, 2nd round pick on a kicker, but still got value. I'd say that's a steal. I don't know, man.
I think so too. So he's a 2-time Pro Bowl as a Lions kicker, 2nd all-time in field goals made when he retired. I don't know if he actually still is at the moment, but I know when he retired, he was 2nd all-time. And like you just mentioned, a Lions all-time leading scorer. Fun fact, I was at that game that he scored. He ended up breaking the Lions record, and I remember sitting with my grandpa, and it was like something like in the 30-yard line or something. Like there's like 4th and 3. Like they should have went for a 4th and 2 or something like that. And I remember my grandpa saying like, only reason that they're not going for it and they're just kicking it is because we suck. And Jason's about to break the record. So we were sitting there at Ford Field. I'm watching that game. I think Jason Hansen he's Legatron. Everyone in Detroit knows and knew Jason Hansen. Played for so many years. Just remarkably consistent, so durable. I think I'm happy with adding him at the back end of my draft there.
Yeah, I think even though that he was the reason why I was kind of hesitant on this having him on my list because he was a 2nd round pick, which I couldn't believe it. I had him on my list and I'm like, wait, when was he drafted? Thinking he was going to be drafted like 5th, 6th round, and he was the 2nd round. But yeah. I still think like you draft a guy in the 2nd round, but he becomes your all-time scoring leader. Yeah, he's a kicker, but he's a legend. I think there's value there. So yeah, I would call that a steal. And
that's definitely, if you haven't had that before, it definitely at one point in your life will be a trivia, like a bar trivia question. All-time Lions scoring point, leader, and everyone's gonna be like Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, and don't forget, it's Jason Hansen. It's Legatron himself. So that is our list. Yeah, let's get to some honorable mentions. I have a few guys that didn't make my list, and then I have a few guys that I thought for sure were going to make my list, but didn't end up, after further review, weren't drafted by Detroit. So I have Chris Spielman, linebacker, who's a major part in the Lions front office at the moment, 4-time Pro Bowl linebacker, was the heart of the Lions defense in the 90s, College Football Hall of Fame, not yet in the pros though.
Then all-time tackles leader for the Lions too, Spielman.
Yep, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, definitely steal there. Again, similar to like Tarek, and similar but yet different. Like Amon-Ra is fantastic. He's working his way towards being, one of the all-time steals in Detroit history, but like he's not quite there yet, and he doesn't have the number one stuff that like Tarek does, as to probably why Tarek made one of our list, and Amon-Ra St. Brown did not.
So you scared me with St. Brown. He was high on my list, but because I made the school pick, and then you're like, well, he's only done it for 3-4 years. I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't pick Amon-Ra St. Brown, but like, I mean, Sun God, he's my boy, 4th round pick. And the reason why I think he's such a steal, there were 16 receivers drafted before St. Brown in that draft. And yeah, he's eclipsed almost 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns in just 4 seasons. 3-time Pro Bowler and 2-time All-Pro. So, yeah, it's a steal, but you scared me away a little bit. I'm like, I can't take Scooble and St. Brown just because they're both still active, so...
Definitely should have bit my tongue. Maybe would have gotten one of those Red Wings players fall to me. Fair enough, though. So just a few other guys: Tayshaun Prince, Rick Porcello. I thought both worthy of being on there. A guy that as soon as we said draft steals, the first guy that came to mind was Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace is
Dude, yes.
an absolute steal. Obviously, it was famously went undrafted. He wasn't even a draft steal. He was an undrafted free agent signing, but he actually did not get signed first and foremost by the Detroit Pistons. I think he got signed to the Orlando Magic and then traded to
For the Bullets.
the Bullets. So it was the Magic and the Bullets only for like one season before coming over to Detroit. So I thought he was obviously up there, but then didn't actually start his career here. So those are a few of the guys that were on my list of whether they were drafted here, or couldn't have made the list because they weren't.
The only 2 other ones, I had a lot of those guys on my list too that you just mentioned. 2 other ones for you. Curtis Granderson was on my list. 3rd round.
That's a good pick.
3-time All-Star, and he really helped the Tigers get to the 2006 World Series. It was the first World Series they had been to since '84. So he's just a real fan favorite in Detroit. I think he's still doing broadcasting for, I think, MLB Network. So you can still hear him a lot. But he had just an insanely long career. Very, very solid career, top to bottom. I think he played from 2005 to 2019, so a really long career. And then, a couple other guys. This one, Tomas Holmstrom, almost said Thomas. Tomas Holmstrom, he was a 10th round pick in the '94 draft, won 4 cups for the Wings, and just such a presence around the net. I mean, he was the mule, just beating the shit out of people around the net. And when you win 4 cups, I mean, drafted in the 10th round, that's a steal in my book. And then the only other guy I had, Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Konstantinov, he was drafted, 89 draft, I think 221st overall. Just a legendary Red Wings defenseman whose career was actually tragically cut short by a limousine accident shortly after winning that '97 Cup. So still an insane value there, but a legend of Detroit, even though his career was cut short. So I had a couple of those guys on the list too.
Yeah, you can add him into that enormous list of Red Wings that were steals. We could truly make. I actually would we could probably put together a starting lineup of Red Wings steal draft picks and put it out there on the ice, and it would be insane. The only other one that I had in that same vein as Lou Whitaker is, like you already mentioned, his running mate, Alan Trammell, drafted by the Tigers. He was also in the 2nd round in the 1976 draft. You mentioned it. They were the 1-2 guys. They were fantastic at 185 home runs, batting average throughout his career of 285. OPS is 767, another mainstay in that 1984 lineup. So you could have gone with either one of them. 4-time Gold Glove, 6-time All-Star. He is in the Hall of Fame, so again, a little bit controversial there that he's in. Lou isn't, but you could have gone with either one there.
Yeah, and went on to manage the Tigers for how many years too? Trammell did. So.
And he's now with our minor league team doing a lot of the developmental stuff. He's working with guys all the time down there.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Shit, that dude's got to be getting old now. I didn't realize he was still in the league, but. Yeah, nice, dude. I think overall, this is going to be a tight one. I don't know who has the advantage. I think you having 4 guys from 4 major sports, while I have all Red Wings. I don't know. We'll see how the listeners vote on that.
Let's wrap up with some grit of the week. I will kick us off here. We'll do some of this and then we'll wrap up here. So my grit of the week is somebody I have been a fan of his forever, and he's kind of one of those guys I was a fan of. I loved his work, and then I found out that he has ties to Detroit. He grew up in Grosse Pointe, just outside Detroit, obviously. Well-known, a super, super Tiger fan. Just over the past year or so, Jason Benetti has had him in the booth talking Tigers multiple times, and this guy knows if you ever catch him in the booth with Benetti and Dirks in there, he knows so much about all these guys. Like he's a true Detroit Tigers, like in the weeds, numbers type of guy. And that's J.K. Simons. J.K. Simons, the all-star, the leading actor in the amazing movie Whiplash, one of my favorite movies. Palm Springs he's in. He is absolutely fantastic. The reason he is my grit of the week is because, and I don't know why this ended up happening, but back on June 27th, so, a little bit over 10 days ago, he threw out the first pitch for the Cleveland Guardians. Again, I don't know why he was doing that for the Guardians. Obviously a well-known, well-documented Tigers fan. He must be maybe doing like a video or movie or something in Cleveland. Not sure why, but he threw out the first pitch for the Cleveland Guardians. When he threw the pitch, you could see under his Guardians jersey, he was wearing a Detroit Tigers shirt. So even while he was promoting his movie or whatever he was doing for the Cleveland Guardians, he still was repping Detroit. Since that game, since he threw out that first pitch, or I should say just after that first pitch, the Cleveland Guardians went 0-10. So J.K. Simons throwing out the first pitch, wearing a Tigers shirt, caused the Guardians to go 0-10. They did just win yesterday against the Astros, so thanks a lot, Kyle. But they went 0-10 after J.K. Simons just schooled them, throwing out the first pitch, wearing a jersey, but then wearing his true colors underneath. Just a legendary move for a legendary man. I'm so glad, like I said, I was a fan of his, and then come to find out he's a huge Detroit sports fan, born and raised here. So J.K. Simons, grit of the week for me, my man.
Yeah, just an incredible pick. Way to think outside the box there, Tyler. Love J.K. Simons as well. Yeah, I mean, I think J.K., you're the reason that Cleveland's dead right now, from a baseball standpoint. So thanks, man. Because yeah, we hate Cleveland. I mean, there's really no more words that need to be said. That's an incredible grit of the week. I could go a couple different ways here, but I'm gonna go with a guy who I think just needs some love. A guy who was snubbed from the All-Star game, I think wrongfully. And he's just had such an incredible season he's 30 years old now and just really coming onto the scene. That's Zach McKinstry, grit of the week. Finished third in fan voting. So Zach, the fans are with you, man. We know that you should have been an all-star, even if the MLB says otherwise. We know you're an all-star, man. Just 2.7 WAR, which is I think top 15 in the American League. And just he's raking. I think what's really awesome is just what he can do. We talked about this already, but what he can do just in the field. He can play any position. Yesterday, I think he was playing right field and, took a ball on two hops and just threw an absolute missile from I think falling over to the other side to third base to gun down a Tampa Bay Ray. I don't know who it was, but I mean, the guy can just do it all. He embodies grit. And that's what I'm looking for in grit of the week. And so Zach McKinstry, grit of the week, man. Congrats, kid.
Dude, that play itself, just like you said, just embodies grit of the week. That was so awesome. It was almost like a janitor throw, like a hint of a janitor throw, and just throwing everything he's got behind it to try and get the third base runner, the guy running from second to third. I loved it. I mean, we talked about Z-Mac a bunch about the snub there. Want to talk about a draft steal. And he wasn't obviously drafted by Detroit. He was one of Scott Harris's first moves as general manager, I think, to trade for Z-Mac from, I think, the Chicago Cubs. Zach McKinstry was a 33rd round draft pick. He's now 30 years old, just now coming onto the scene. So he is so worthy of it. I mean, he's going to be sitting at home and not on the All-Star game, unless someone does go down with an injury, and he might get the call there, like you said, third in fan voting. But that play alone is so worthy of it. He's hitting 285, I believe, at the moment. So I love it. He went to Central Michigan, I believe, so he's a Chippewa, even though we're Spartans.
I was just about to say that.
We got a bunch of Chippewa fans, a lot of family I have that are Chippewas. So fire up Chips, Zach McKinstry. It can't be his first grit of the week, right? He's got to have at least a multiple at this point, right?
I think he's a multiple time winner, yeah, and well deserving. Z-Mac, we love you, man. Keep
it up. Let's not let it be the last one. I mean, the way he's playing, there's no chance it can't be his last one. He's just playing so incredibly well. So great grit of the week. Shout out to JK and to Z-Mac, both you guys. Okay, come on the show. We're getting the nitty gritty of the Detroit Tigers numbers, and we'll talk about, again, my favorite movie ever, Palm Springs. You were fantastic in that. But wow. All right, that's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find Kyle on Twitter at Kyle_Marino. You can find me on Twitter at Dutton_Tyler and at both Piston Powered and Champaign Athletics. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram or on TikTok at Gridiron Report. You can follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1 or watch us on YouTube at Gridiron Report. Again, we'll put our snake drafts onto all forms of social media. So go ahead and give us a follow, and then make sure you guys vote so we know who has won the snake draft, the Mount Rushmore of the biggest Detroit sleeper draft picks. Finally, join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That number is 313-306-7939. And if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars, leave us a nice review saying so. Tell all your family and friends to listen because it helps us to give you more Detroit sports stuff. So thanks, y'all, for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Let's go Tigers. Let's go to the world.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired. Grit Iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.